Okay, hello everyone. This is part two of the self-study physics series. Today I'm going to talk about sort of studying high school level physics. So I'm assuming here the average person probably hasn't studied much maths or physics since high school. So you may have to do some revision of certain concepts you would have learned then before you're ready to, pick up a university level calculus or linear algebra book or introductory physics textbook. So the first topic you need to really learn quite well, and I'd say to start with this, is algebra. And in particular, you need to get really good at solving equations. So that includes linear equations, quadratic equations, exponential equations, simultaneous equations, equations involving algebraic fractions. This is going to be really important. This is crucial, like foundational to all of your further studies in maths and physics. And today's going to be pretty maths heavy because really the maths is a prereq for actually starting to really study physics. Um, so, along with algebra, once you're pretty comfortable with that, I would say you can start with trigonometry, and trigonometry is going to be very important for physics in general for the rest of time, basically. Right now, you don't have to cover super advanced stuff, but I would say understand the basic ratios, um, maybe learn what the trigonometric graphs and functions look like, learn a little bit about solving trigonometric equations. Might be helpful to learn the sine rule and the cosine rule, um, or also known as the law of sines or the law of cosines. Not necessarily super important right now, but could be. Um, so yeah, just learn the sort of basics of trig. I don't think you need to know a huge amount yet. You certainly don't need to know like hyperbolic functions and Taylor series of trigonometric functions, or definitely not calculus involving trigonometric functions or anything like that. Um, And once you've got your equations and trigonometry down, I would say you can start with a high school level physics textbook, and you'll want to really go into classical mechanics and electromagnetism. In the beginning with physics, I would say those are the two most important areas. So you're going to want to go through things like Newton's laws of motion. You're going to want to learn about work, energy, and power. You're going to want to get to concepts like kinetic energy and potential energy. Already mentioned work, momentum, and conservation of momentum. Concepts like that from classical mechanics are really important. Maybe a little bit on waves too. Again, not going into a huge amount of mathematical detail, but understanding what is a transverse wave, what's a longitudinal wave, what's the speed of a wave, what's the frequency of a wave, the wavelength, etc. Again, this type of thing, depending on your country, but is probably covered in most high school level physics textbooks. This is fairly basic introductory stuff that you kind of need to know. Um, Next up, I would say with electromagnetism, you need to know what an electric field is, what electric charges are, and of course, you need to know Coulomb's law. Those are the most important things. You might want to do a little bit on circuits and Kirchhoff's laws if those interest you, but I don't think it's entirely essential, especially since, as I mentioned in this series, we're focusing on theoretical physics and what you can learn from a textbook. So more applied aspects might not be that relevant simply because you could probably get a circuit board, and if you want to play around with it, you could do that. If it interests you, go ahead. But I don't think it's the most important thing for the sort of curriculum I'm suggesting you do. Um, so those are the most important aspects of classical mechanics and electromagnetism. I would say that at this point, you can also have a look at some topics that you just covered the very basics of without going into a huge amount of mathematical detail. So those topics might include things like special relativity or the photoelectric effect. You're probably going to want to know a little bit about atoms and the periodic table at the very least. Yeah, those are also maybe topics that'll be interesting to you and might give you a little taster of the physics that's going to come. Then the other thing I'd really recommend learning at this point is a tiny little bit on probability and statistics. Things like just understanding what actually is probability, how do I calculate probabilities, what are independent and dependent events. I think also measures of central tendency, things like mean, mode, median, range. Um, have some concept of what standard deviation and variance are, maybe a little bit about what an expectation value is. Um, you might even be able to get like a introductory level like university textbook at this point, because um, like a textbook like Sheldon Ross's A First Course in Probability. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think for the earlier chapters you could probably get through it without knowing it much more than just how to solve equations. You don't need a lot of advanced maths. Maybe for some of the later chapters, you might need calculus. I don't remember exactly, but just something that gets you a little bit primed with probability is kind of also essential. I think those are the most important areas from high school that you really need to learn. Again, I say high school, this might be early on in university for you, depending on your country and how the curriculum works. Um, but yeah, these are the most important areas. And this is building mostly mathematical foundation. Because in the next video, we're going to get started talking about things like calculus and linear algebra. And we're going to take physics up to the next level and start using more advanced mathematics while doing physics. So we're going to cover a lot of the same topics, but start with calculus. Anyway, I don't want to spoil the next video too much. But if you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please, give the video a like, and, if you want to, you can subscribe to the channel too. Okay.